One word. That is all it took. One word from the FBI Director of the United States delivered under oath in front of a congressional committee that made every promise he had spent 2 years making impossible to reconcile with what he was now saying. Zero. Not a number he arrived at reluctantly. Not a number extracted from him after hours of pressure. A number he confirmed directly in response to a direct question as the factual state of the evidence his agency possesses. The number of individuals Jeffrey Epstein trafficked minors to, beyond Epstein himself and Ghislaine Maxwell, according to the FBI. Zero. Stay until the very end, because zero is not the end of this story. It is the beginning of the question that the rest of this hearing could not answer. And that question is the most important thing Kash Patel has been asked in any congressional proceeding. If you are new here, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Because this is not a hearing where a number was disputed. It is a hearing where a number was confirmed. And the confirmation is what creates the problem. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett established the number directly. According to your testimony, she said, and according to the evidence the FBI possesses, the number of people Epstein trafficked girls to, other than Epstein and Maxwell, is zero. Patel confirmed it. The index has been released. The number charged based on credible evidence is zero. And once that number was in the record, everything else in the session became a different kind of conversation. Not about what the FBI knows, about what that number means when placed against the public record of the man who produced it. That record is specific. Before becoming FBI director, Kash Patel made a series of statements about what the FBI was hiding, why it was hiding it, and what he would do when he was in a position to change it. The FBI is protecting the world's foremost predator. Simple. Because of who is on that list. He said it, publicly, on camera. He said, put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophile. He said, regardless of who is embarrassed, the names should come out. He said no cover-ups, no missing documents, no stone left unturned. And then he reviewed 300 gigabytes. And the number he produced was zero. The same person who spent 2 years demanding names confirmed that the evidence contains none. Those two positions occupy the same public record, and they cannot both be honest descriptions of the same body of material. Keep that in your mind as the session unfolds. Not as a political judgment, as a logical constraint. If the FBI was actively protecting powerful names because of who is on that list, then zero cannot be the evidence count. And if zero is the honest evidence count, then the protection narrative has no object. There is nothing to protect because there is nothing there. Both cannot be simultaneously true. Crockett understood that, and she pressed directly into the gap. There is a specific way that gap becomes visible when you map the timeline. Patel's public statements ran from September 2023 through February 2025. Across that period, he returned to the same theme consistently. The FBI has a list. Powerful people are on it. The institution is protecting them. That is not a single offhand comment. It is a sustained position maintained across multiple platforms over more than a year. And positions maintained that consistently are not accidents of language. They are commitments. The person who said those things believed them to be true, or performed believing them for an audience that wanted them to be true. Either way, the zero does not fit. A sustained commitment to the existence of a protected list and a confirmed zero are not compatible statements about the same evidence. And Patel, who built a public profile on the first, now defends the second without explaining how both can have been honest descriptions of the same reality. That explanation has never been offered, and the hearing did not produce one. She asked for the names. Who are the other names? Give me the ones that were not charged. Patel's answer was the construction that defined the exchange. The FBI does not release the names of individuals for whom the Department of Justice does not have credible information. That sentence does significant work. It does not say charges could not be brought. It does not say the evidence was insufficient. It says credible information does not exist. That is a stronger claim. It removes not just the possibility of prosecution, but the existence of the underlying material. And that stronger claim is what sits most directly against the 2 years of public accusations. Because when Patel said the FBI was protecting powerful people because of who is on that list, he was not describing a situation in which credible information was absent. He was describing a situation in which credible information existed and was being suppressed. Those are opposite claims. And the distance between them is a problem that zero creates but does not resolve. What the phrase "no credible information" actually does in this context deserves its own examination. It is a framing choice. And the choice matters because it determines what the public is owed. If credible information does not exist, the public is owed nothing. The case is empty. There is no list, no protected names, no suppressed evidence, just an absence. But if information exists and has been deemed insufficient for prosecution, the public occupies a different position. It can examine the standard that was applied. It can weigh whether the threshold was correct. It can form its own view of whether powerful people received different treatment. That second situation gives the public standing to evaluate what was decided. The first eliminates that standing entirely, and Patel chose the first framing. While the 302 documents he was simultaneously defending suggest the second is the more accurate description. Crockett moved to those documents directly. FBI 302S are witness interview records. They document what people told federal investigators, under what circumstances, in what detail. They are not grand jury transcripts. They are not sealed court filings. They are investigative records that sit in a different legal category from the materials Patel had cited as constrained by court orders. Victims who cooperated with the investigation gave accounts to FBI investigators. Those accounts were documented. Those documents are in FBI possession. And those accounts named people. Crockett asked why the names those victims provided had not been disclosed. Patel said the FBI does not release material it does not consider credible. Crockett pressed the point. These are accounts given by victims under federal investigation, documented by FBI agents, held in FBI files. On what basis are they not credible? And Patel's response introduced a new frame. Multiple United States attorneys across 3 administrations reviewed the same material and concluded it did not rise to prosecutorial standards. The prosecutorial standards framing shifts the ground again. He said the evidence did not meet the standard for prosecution, which is different from saying credible information does not exist. A standard is a threshold. Material can exist below a threshold. And material that exists below the threshold for prosecution is not the same as material that does not exist. Patel has moved between these two characterizations throughout the session without acknowledging that they are different. No credible information describes an absence. Evidence that does not meet prosecutorial standards describes a presence that was evaluated and found insufficient. Only one of those frames forecloses public disclosure. And the frame Patel uses shifts depending on which question he is answering. When the question is why there are no names, the frame is absence. When the question is why prior reviews reached the same conclusion, the frame is insufficient evidence. The hearing never pinned him to one or the other, and the record now holds both simultaneously. What the shifting framing reveals, when you watch it across the full session, is a responsive strategy rather than a fixed position. When the question threatens to establish that names exist in the files, the framing moves to absence. When the question threatens to establish that Patel personally suppressed those names, the framing moves to institutional consistency across administrations. Each frame is deployed to close the specific line of questioning that produced it, and each deployment leaves a residue. The absence frame implies the 2 years of public accusations were baseless. The institutional consistency frame implies the prior reviews Patel spent 2 years attacking were actually sound. Both residues are problems for Patel, and the session produced both without ever fully resolving either. What you are left with at the end is a witness who has defended the zero using 2 arguments that cannot both be true, against a public record that makes both of them difficult to sustain. The prior administration's argument deserves specific scrutiny. Patel cites it as validation. Prosecutors under Obama, under the first Trump term, under Biden, all reviewed the material. All reached the same conclusion. The consistency across administrations and parties is meant to suggest the zero is not a partisan outcome, but the argument contains a circularity that the session surfaced without fully pressing. The prior administrations being cited as validators are the same institutions that have faced sustained public criticism for how they handled the Epstein case. The inadequacy of those prior reviews is precisely what Patel spent 2 years on camera attacking. He did not spend 2 years saying prior administrations did a thorough job and reached honest conclusions. He spent 2 years saying the FBI was protecting powerful people, and now those same prior decisions are the foundation of his defense. The institution he accused of protecting the list is now the institution whose conclusions he is citing to justify the zero. That is not a defense. It is the accusation restated as the authority behind the conclusion. Crockett came back to the victims at the end of the session, women who had traveled to Capitol Hill, who had testified publicly about being trafficked at 14 and 16 years old, who had requested meetings with the president and with the FBI, who had named specific individuals and accounts that are documented in FBI files. She asked Patel whether he had met with them. He had not. She asked whether he planned to. He said the FBI would meet with anyone who brought new information. Crockett identified exactly what was wrong with that framing. These women are not bringing new information. They are the information. Their accounts are the 302 documents. Their cooperation is the material Patel was defending as the basis for the zero, describing them as potential sources of new information rather than as the foundation of the existing record is a way of moving the people most capable of challenging the zero to the outside of the process that produced it. The implications of that position are worth sitting with. The FBI director confirmed that 0 people were charged. The basis for that zero includes 302 accounts from victims who named individuals. Those victims have not been contacted by the current director. They are being described as potential future contributors rather than as the established record, which means the zero is being defended using material produced by people whose current perspective on that material has never been sought. Patel is citing what investigators concluded about the 302 accounts without having asked the people who gave those accounts whether the conclusions were accurate. That is not standard investigative practice when the original source is available and willing to engage. And the victims who came to Capitol Hill were not hiding. They were present. They were accessible. They had named the hearing as a place they wanted to be heard. The director who confirmed the zero had not spoken to a single one of them. And then came the simplest question of the entire session. Are the victims credible? Not do they meet a prosecutorial threshold. Not does their testimony support charges. Are they credible as people? Patel would not answer. He said prior administrations had reviewed the material. He said the FBI welcomes new information. He did not say yes. And that refusal is what the zero actually means. Consider what a yes would have required. If Patel said yes, the victims are credible, the next question writes itself. Then why has nothing been done about the names they provided? Yes closes the credibility question and opens the accountability one, and the accountability question has no answer that defends the zero. So the yes never came. And in its absence, both questions remain open simultaneously in the same congressional record. It is not the absence of names in the files. It is the absence of a yes when asked whether the people whose cooperation built those files are credible. There are names in the 302 documents. There are victim accounts identifying those names. There are records in FBI possession of specific conduct by specific individuals. The zero is not a description of what is in the files. It is a description of what has been done about it. And the answer to whether that counts as transparency is the same word Patel confirmed at the beginning of this session, zero.